Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it. California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job. And with essential services, that's not good.
The backlash to Bill Maher's takedown of the Democrats came faster than a vegan bolting from a Texas barbecue. You could practically picture liberal Twitter clutching their soy lattes in shock as he torched his own party like it was open MIC night at a flamethrower factory. Honestly, with the way he went in, you'd think he had a mega hat tucked behind that grin. Maher's clearly done with the political smoke and mirrors, fed up with double standards, and edging closer to a no-nonsense, bipartisan reality check. The train's leaving the station, and if you want your political truth bombs without the sugarcoating, you're in the right place.
And a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in the state every year to people who I assume were working on things like this.
California boasts some of the highest taxes in the nation. And yet, you'd think all that money would buy at least a few basic competencies. Instead, the Golden State rakes in billions while still fumbling the fundamentals. And Bill Maher, he's fresh out of patience. His face practically says, I'm 5 seconds away from flipping this table. He zeroed in on Governor Gavin Newsom, torching him over wildfire mismanagement, crumbling infrastructure, and a laundry list of administrative blunders. When the criticism is this blunt, you have to wonder, how bad do things have to get before loyal Democrats start sounding like conservative pundits?
Why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you gotta do that before the...
Why am I not shocked that California's politicians were caught flat-footed by the Pacific Palisades fire? Because they've mastered the art of big speeches, flashy promises, and microscopic follow-through. Think Broadway, but with more wildfires and fewer solutions. Instead of clearing brush or upgrading fire safety systems, Democrats seem more eager to throw a lavish climate gala and pat themselves on the back. It's political theater while the state quite literally burns. If you're expecting swift, practical action, you'll probably walk away with a hashtag, a podium performance, and maybe a shiny new tax law, but no real results.
Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone. Stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2011.
An empty reservoir in California isn't just a mistake. It's a catastrophic failure in a state where wildfire season is as predictable as summer itself. How does a place that burns every year not have an emergency water reserve? We've got satellites, smartphones, and artificial intelligence, yet somehow no one thought, hey, maybe store some water. Taxpayers have poured in billions, and there's no excuse. Past generations, with far fewer resources, would have handled this better. Today's leaders seem more interested in photo ops than fire prep. So when the next big blaze hits, and it will, don't just blame climate change. Hold the officials accountable for letting reservoirs run dry so they could rehearse for their next press conference.
Said about cuts to the fire department's budget, there were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation. The fire chief here had a slightly different take. She said, we are screaming to be properly funded. And yes, the budget was cut and it did impact our ability to provide service. And by the looks of all the fire engines in the boneyard out of service because we didn't fix them,
I remember Gavin Newsom proudly parading California's shiny, high-tech fire trucks and helicopters, bragging they could spot wildfires with the precision of a bloodhound. It all sounded impressive, until reality hit. Many of those trucks have been sitting idle while fires tear through the state. Meanwhile, Mayor Karen Bass insists that budget cuts to the fire department are no big deal, a claim about as logical as saying loosening your brakes makes your car faster. It's no wonder people, Bill Maher included, are fed up with the spin, the broken promises, and the abysmal leadership.
Power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize.
California is collapsing like a Jenga tower in an earthquake drill, despite having some of the highest taxes in America. Meanwhile, Texas is handling emergencies, luring businesses, and actually building infrastructure. In California, homelessness is surging, public services are falling apart, and wildfires keep wiping out entire communities. Residents are fleeing in record numbers, and those who remain are being crushed by the cost of living. Through it all, state officials keep making hollow promises, as if words alone can rebuild what their leadership has let crumble.
Power lines that cut through Panga weren't upgraded because it endangered an herb, the milk vetch, which sounds like something they serve at Passover. I mean, talk about not seeing the forest for the trees. You know what the absolute worst thing for the environment is? Wildfires. A 22 study found that the smoke from just the two in 2020 wiped out 18 years of carbon reduction in the state, which means we suffered the pain of driving those early model Priuses for nothing.
Sometimes California's environmental laws backfire spectacularly. Case in point, state officials refused to upgrade aging electrical cables to protect a certain plant species. The result? Wildfires that torched thousands of acres, wiped out wildlife, displaced families, and pumped massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Turns out, good intentions don't excuse avoidable disasters, especially when the solution ends up causing far more damage than the problem it was meant to prevent.
California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail.
Next on Gavin Newsom's list of unkept promises, the so-called train of the future, California's high-speed rail. After more than a decade and billions of dollars, the project is still crawling along at the speed of a lawnmower in reverse. The budget has ballooned, the timeline keeps getting pushed back, and taxpayers are left wondering if the only thing moving fast is the money out of their wallets.
Highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland. What is included for that? Breadsticks? Because it clearly doesn't cover fire. That's government's job. Protect us from crime, violence, theft, fire. I'm not saying Alabama would have done better with fires by fighting them with prayer in school. But look me in the eye and tell me anyone could have done worse. We just got our ass kicked by fire, something Neanderthals for.
It's no surprise that big names like Mel Gibson, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, and John Voight have taken aim at Gavin Newsom's leadership. Many say he's turned California from the Golden State into a cautionary tale. Case in point, in the middle of severe droughts and raging wildfires, the state poured massive amounts of its precious water into one of the most water-hungry crops imaginable, almonds. You couldn't script a better example of priorities gone wrong.
Our fire chief is a lesbian. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job, and with essential services, that's not good enough.
Bill Maher went scorched earth on the Democratic Party, blasting its fixation on identity politics over proven ability. Symbolic gestures, he said, won't solve inflation, crumbling infrastructure, or disasters like wildfires. His Exhibit A, Kamala Harris, whose appointment he claims was driven more by optics than qualifications, a choice that's led to slow, muddled decision-making. Californians, he warned, are already at their breaking point, and the rest of the country is starting to feel the same frustration. If leaders don't start prioritizing results over labels, the road ahead is going to be rough.